Well, to discuss this, I'm joined from Sana'a by Radhya Almutawakel. She's the chairwoman of the Mwatana Organization for Human Rights. Also in Sana'a is pro-Houthi journalist Hussain Albukhaiti. And across the border in Riyadh, we have Salman al Ansari. He's the founder and president of the Saudi American Public Relations Affairs Committee. And with me here in the studio is Yemen's former health minister Najeeb Ghanem, who's now a member of Al-Islah, a Yemeni opposition party that supports the Saudi-led coalition. I thank you all for joining us. If I could establish some house rules before we begin. We've only got 20 minutes for all of us. I don't mind if you interrupt each other, that's okay. But if you could all keep your answers as brief as possible, I'd appreciate it so we can get everybody to contribute. Let me start with you, Najeeb Ghanem. So, Hudaida, the port, seen as strategic. There's an onslaught that is imminent. We're hearing that the coalition's at the door, essentially, about 9 kilometers away. The UN saying don't do it because innocent men, women and children will die. Will it be worth it to take over this city, the port city, with an onslaught?
Thank you. Innocent will not be die because Arab National Army Forces and also Arab Allied Forces, they will do it as it was being done in Aden. So all these, exaggeration about civilians and casualties and all these things, I think this is some sort of based on biased reports.
But what about the hundreds of civilians that have died over the past 3 years?
Hundreds of civilians have been died by the coup, by the militias, Houthis, who are, put our country in this catastrophe.
Yeah, but you can say you're on one side here, but that terrible errors have occurred through airstrikes and other means. It's proven by human rights groups, by the United Nations.
If the National Army will reach Hudaida, this will terminate the coup. And stability will be there, and we can guarantee stability there. But the militias of Houthis still till now persisting for the coup and persisting for the bloodshed. Till now they are responsible for all these bloodshed, for the money had been stolen, for the poverty spread all over the country. This is the main catastrophe. Unfortunately, so many reports has been misled the international community about speaking about that there is
United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International,
based on
the British, the Americans, all of them. Even the Americans and the British who support the coalition admit to the civilians who have died.
Most of this has been based, for example, I can give you one of these biased reports made by Radhya Almutawakel, when she just went to Taiz and said that there is hundreds of people have been killed by unknown rocket sources. The rockets were by Houthis itself.
Okay, so
this is part of these biased
so you're making
reports.
a claim against Radhya. Radhya, you can answer for yourself here. We have the opportunity to, we can hand you the opportunity to respond. Radhya, you're a biased journalist according to Najeeb.
First, I'm not a journalist. I'm a human rights defender. Second, whenever we talk about the war, there is something I should say that in the war in Yemen, there are no heroes. We only have criminals and victims. And all parties to the conflict are committing horrible violations against victims, as Houthis are killing civilians and injuring civilians by indiscriminate shelling or landmines. Also, the Saudi-led coalition has killed thousands of civilians. Most of them are women and children by their airstrikes. So, as I said, all sides are just committing horrible violations against civilians in Yemen. And this is very clear in our reports as Mwatana Organization for Human Rights, and anyone can just go and visit our website.
Okay, let me bring in Hussain Albukhaiti. Hussain, isn't it a better idea if the Houthis, to prevent terrible bloodshed, handed over the port? Because we're hearing from the UN envoy that it might be possible that the Houthis would hand over Hudaida to prevent catastrophe.
This is not true because there are two-side war. You cannot ask one side to hand over a city because another forces is about to attack this city and it might result in a major humanitarian disaster. You should ask the other side to stop attacking the port because the port is one of the only left lifeline for millions of Yemeni. And it's really silly for Mr. Najeeb Ghanem to say civilians will not die. I mean, in a war, civilians are the main casualty of the war. And the only civilians now that are killed in Hudaida city is by the Saudi-led coalition airstrike. And for him to support the takeover for Hudaida and compare it with the takeover of Aden, we are seeing now what's happening in Aden. Al-Qaeda, Daesh, militia groups, and United Arab Emirates is now, is hunting down Islahi members, the members of the same party that Mr. Ghanem is from. They are killing them, hunting them, imprisoning them. And it's really strange that he is now supporting United Arab Emirates, who has actually declared his party as terrorist organization to take over Hudaida, and he says civilians will not die.
Okay.
There are hundreds of Islahi members who are killed.
Okay, and I'm going to give
by United Arab
point
Emirates
well
in the
made.
south.
You made your point. I'm going to give Najeeb Ghanem a chance to respond to that in a moment, but I want to bring in Salman al Ansari. Salman, there is a humanitarian catastrophe in Yemen right now, no matter which side you fall on this. There's a humanitarian crisis.
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Imran, and thanks to all your guests. We have to put things into context right now. First of all, there is really some exaggeration, as Mr. Najeeb has said, about the whole thing about the port. First of all, there are 22 ports, dry ports and normal ports in Yemen that receive humanitarian assistance specifically from Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Because if you look at the humanitarian assistance, all the reports say that during the 2017 and 2018, Saudi Arabia provided up to $8 billion in humanitarian assistance, direct and indirect, to Yemen. So I'm not going to say who is close to Saudi Arabia, but just give me a block of 10 countries. Just give me a block of 10 countries that match the amount of support that the kingdom is giving
also
to
give
the
me
Yemenis.
any country that has bombed
Okay.
Yemen as much as Saudi Arabia. We can play this game the other way as well.
Yeah.
So make your point, sir.
No, okay, great. Good question. Okay, there is no war. This is something we all agree upon, I believe. There is no war at all whatsoever without casualties. We have to accept that fact. It's sad. Yes, indeed. It's so sad that there are casualties, that there are civilians that get killed. But I would respect any report that would shed the light on the real things that happens on the ground, because I can see that there are a lot of criticism about Saudi Arabia, but I don't see the same amount of criticism about the Houthis,
Salman,
because the Houthis are the ones that are killing civilians and bombing them.
You heard Radhya say that the Houthis are also killing civilians, but the Saudi-led coalition is killing civilians as well.
I'm talking in general. I'm not speaking about what Mrs. Radhya has said. I'm talking in general, because if you go and see the condemnation kind of fashion right now is to go against Saudi Arabia. This is something else. And when it comes to the port itself, yes, indeed, it's an important port to get humanitarian assistance for the western side of Yemen. But if we keep things at the status quo right now, what will happen? What we will see is the Houthis will still have weapons to be smuggled from Iran. We will still see the Houthis to be stealing the assistance, the humanitarian assistance that comes from not only the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but from the whole world and the international community. So the status quo right now in Hudaida will not help anybody, will not help Yemeni people.
And you guys want to finish it off.
The coalition will not help anybody. So that's why it's very important to go against the Houthis. And right now, the Houthis consider the port, the moment they lose the port, is the moment they lose the whole battle, because they will not have weapons to be smuggled into them at all. But I urge everybody definitely to be careful when it comes to casualties.
Okay, and we're trying our best using the best verifiable information that's coming from the international organizations as we try to sift through this. Najeeb Ghanem, you heard from Hussain Albukhaiti. You said you want Hudaida to be just like Aden, which is a model for it. He's saying your own party is being butchered by extremists.
This is another story, really, and also this is another story. And nobody said that we are terrorist army and all these things by the Emirates official. But there is something, you know, social media and all these things. This is another story, I think. Anyway, I can guarantee.
You're saying it will be like Aden. Aden was good. He's saying Aden's nowhere near good. Your own party
I didn't say good, but I say that just if the national army just come to capture Hudaida port, we are going to make a very good step to terminate this coup in Sana'a. I can assure you now, the stores in Sana'a full of food. They can survive and they can cover the people for 6 months, you know, onward. But the problem is there is no money for the people, because the spread of the poverty, public money has been stolen by the coup, by the militias of Houthi. So these coup made by the Houthis are the main cause for the bloodshed, for the poverty, for all this catastrophe in Yemen. When the army coming to Sana'a, to Hudaida, we can guarantee that there is going to be an end for the coup, and there will be stability, and we are going to eradicate all these agony about our people.
Okay.
But this is the outcomes of the catastrophe of the coup,
Okay.
not the allied forces and the government army.
Radhya Almutawakel, does that sound accurate to you? Once the Houthis are defeated, everything will fall into place, according to Najeeb Ghanem. Is that as simple? Is it as simple as that to you?
I wish it was simple like that. The problem in Yemen that Houthis are just part of the problem, but not all of the problem. Ordinary people, they lost hope in all military interventions. Why? Because the only result since 3 years is the civilian harm. There is no military victory. There is no, as all parties to the conflict, they don't have a peace plan. They don't even have a war plan. And people, they just see as the situation under the authority of de facto of Houthis is horrible. Also, the situation under the authority of Hadi government and the Saudi-led coalition is horrible. So people will keep asking, what is the result of all of this? The 3 years of war just empowered fanatic groups in both sides. And no one is benefited from this. Only arms trade groups, maybe, only war economic, even countries or groups who are involved in this war does not have any benefit of it.
Right.
So the only fact in the war in Yemen is the civilian harm. All other things is just nothing.
Hussain Albukhaiti, have the Houthis put civilians in danger by firing rockets across the border into Saudi Arabia, which the Saudis say are Iranian-made? Have the Houthis been gambling with the lives of innocent Yemenis?
The one who is gambling with the life of Yemenis is the one who started the war. On 26th of March 2015, Saudi started the war against Yemen without any reason. There is no UN resolution supporting this war, so it's an illegal war. And the Houthi has responded to the Saudi only after 40 days of the start of the war. So the Saudi, and I will just about the guest, I believe, from Saudi Arabia, when he mentioned about the help that's coming to Yemen, and he said 8 billion has been spent on aid to Yemen. Where is this 8 billion? Doesn't this include the hundreds of thousands of bombs that are dropped on civilians? I mean, it doesn't matter if you agree with the Houthi or not. Let's say the Houthi, what they did in Sana'a is a coup. I mean, what right have Saudi Arabia to come and kill over 15,000 Yemeni civilians? There was a coup in Egypt against the first elected government in Egypt history, President Morsi. There is a coup. Sisi now is the best alliance with Saudi Arabia. So it's not about the coup, it's just about that the Saudi want Yemen to stay the backyard of Saudi Arabia, to stay a place where they can send their terrorists, where they can actually put all the rubbish inside.
Okay, Hussain, before I go to Salman for a response, let me ask you directly, is it wrong for the Houthis to fire rockets blindly at civilian populations in Saudi Arabia?
Just mention one civilian area that they have target with the ballistic missile. All their ballistic missiles
they almost hit
is
an airport.
On Saudi military airport or Saudi. Sorry, no, it's an airport that's used as well as a military base. There's a military base in there.
Okay,
and
so you feel it's
just
justified.
check on Google.
Okay, you feel it's justified.
And so. Yeah, and they and just I will add one thing. We all Yemenis here are waiting for the Ansar al-Houthi to target all infrastructure of Saudi Arabia, all military and economic infrastructure, as they did in Yemen. An eye for an eye, as simple as that.
Salman?
Yeah, I think I'm glad that your honorable guest admitted the fact that it was a coup. And he said that there is no international agreement with regards to the intervention in Yemen, which is completely and absolutely wrong. The United Nations Security Council 2216 said it clearly that the militia, the Iranian-backed militia, should be out of the game because they have
This is after a war. This is after the war, and it has not legitimized the war.
After or before? Sorry, do not interrupt me because I didn't do so. This is number one. Number two. To answer to what Mrs. Radhya has said, Mrs. Radhya has said something that I need to clarify. She said that there is no benefits of the war at all. This is actually not true at all. Let's face it. Let's face the reality. Al-Qaeda was in Al-Mukalla. Who kicked them out? Who exterminated Al-Qaeda other than the Saudi-led coalition? This is number one. Number two, who applies the United Nations Security Council other than the Saudi-led coalition? It's the Saudi-led coalition. So who actually liberated 85% of the Yemeni land other than the Saudi-led coalition? Definitely with the support of the ground forces of the legitimate government of Yemen. And one of the most important things that should be very concerning for the West and for the international community is the Strait of Bab Mandeb, the Strait of Mandeb. It has been liberated from the Houthis, which is an Iranian militia. Because imagine if the Strait of Mandeb is in the hands of such a militant, despicable group like Houthis, that is part of the Iranian militia groups. And more than 10% of the world trade actually goes through there. So this is very important. And something else that is very concerning that people should actually pay attention to is the fact that the Houthis is the only radical militia that has the technology or has imported the technology of ballistic missiles. This is very concerning, not only for the region or the Middle East, but also for nations in Europe, because you will be having a non-state actor to have a ballistic missile technology. That is very dangerous.
Radhya, one of the points that Salman made, he feels that you're failing to see the silver lining here. He feels the country is better off since the war began. How do you feel about that?
Actually, again, I wish if the situation is just like easy, like he just explained. It's very difficult to know that all the governance that is controlled by Hadi government and supported by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, fanatic armed groups are just controlling a very big areas in these places, and this is one of the most dangerous future for Yemen, because Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, they empowered fanatic religious groups in the areas they have controlled to fight Houthis. They never tried to rebuild the state. They never tried to rebuild the army. They never tried even to help to let me finish. They didn't even try to rebuild, for example, the judiciary system. So we have fanatic armed groups in Sana'a, but also we have fanatic armed groups in Aden and other governorates.
So let me ask Najeeb Ghanem.
Of the way that the Saudi-led coalition has administrated the situation.
We're running out of time. Najeeb Ghanem, Saudi and the UAE have empowered fanatics, according to Radhya. Why do you disagree?
Still, unfortunately, Radhya is still persisting and insisting to make these biased reports. What she has said is coming directly and entirely in favor of the coup of the militias. So always she is one of the big, stronger lawyer for the coup and militias in Yemen. By the way, the Saudi-led forces...
She'd be doing a bad job if she was working for the Houthis, because she's been criticizing
I'll tell you something. The Saudi-led forces coming, according to the request by the legitimate president, Mr. Abdul Mansur Hadi. So this is, and they come as a reaction for the coup made by the Houthis. So they are just coming by legitimate request. And when we are going to stop this coup, we are going to make an end for all this bloodshed, for the agony of the people, for the spirit of diversity. The problem is, this is the coup, and this is all the outcomes of the coup. Once the army coming to Hudaida, everything will be stable, inshallah, and this will be one of the cornerstone and one main step to make the coup for the termination of the coup in Yemen.
Okay, what is clear is that people are suffering. Hudaida is important, and we'll be watching it very closely. I have to, unfortunately, move on the program, but it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Radhya Almutawakel, Hussain Albukhaiti, Salman al Ansari, and with me in studio, Najeeb Ghanem. I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.